statistically, they go per 100,000, right? So
Right.
even though we got more 100,000s, it's still per, right? How many homicides per 100,000? How many of this? So you keep track of the viciousness cycle. Are people becoming more vicious or less violent? Or are these policies working to keep people's worst, what do you call it? You have no impulse, worst impulses under control. I fight every day against my demons because I have, lots of impulses to violence. And I'm like, oh, nope, not going to do that. Nope. Jesus wouldn't want me to do that. Wouldn't want me to, but I still have those thoughts. But I have some good impulse control, right? I have impulsive thoughts, but I don't act on them because my control goes in and says, no, that wouldn't work well. But I've always been good at analyzing the situation really quickly and saying, no, that works out worse. In the long run, that works out bad for me. All right. A lot of people don't have that impulse control. All right. That's why you have to force that impulse control into them. And I was doing a little bit of research. Now, to get to the Second Amendment here, because what we're talking about is armed violence and mostly handgun violence. Long guns, the AK-47s, the M16s, the ARs, the the black powdered, muskets, on-rifled smoothbore 70 caliber, Kentucky squirrel shooters or whatever. Those, you don't see a lot of mass shootings with those, although it's possible you could if you're a good reloader, or you just had a stack of rifles preloaded. You don't see a lot of that anymore. But going to the Second Amendment, and again, one of the first things the Second Amendment states, it gives like a definition of why we have, I don't think any of the other amendments say why we have this amendment. Why is this there? Why? It's just there. It's not like when they did the 18th Amendment was prohibition, right? They didn't say because drunks are ruining this country, right? But you get there and it says it starts out with a well-regulated militia. Boom. It doesn't say militia, well-regulated, under control. Someone's controlling it. It's not just a bunch of people that got together and decided to have a shoot 'em up party. Being necessary to security of a free state. Doesn't say a monarchy. It doesn't say a dictatorship. It says a free state. So people are free within the state, right? And the security of the state relies on the people. The people shouldn't rely on the state for security. That's what they're saying, is that the state relies on the people for security. All right, there's the difference, all right? People living in a totalitarian government, they have no control, and the government needs to protect them. Sometimes they overly protect them, right? The right of the people to keep and bear arms, all right, to have weapons, arms, shall not be infringed. And when you say militia, it's military-style arms. And we talked about this before, but that was months and months ago. Back in the day, you didn't have a standing army, all right? You had to rely on your militia, which were organized within each state, all right? And the states couldn't afford to buy everyone military-grade muskets. Not even the government couldn't afford to buy everyone military-grade muskets and everything. So it's like we're requiring the people to have their own weapons. So it comes back to militia, right? And this was kind of explained to me by a sergeant that I really respected this guy. And he only made it up to sergeant first class, and he probably should have been a lot higher. But we had a disagreement, and he says, no, Second Amendment only applies to militia, which is the reserves and the National Guard. I'm like, okay, but even then, if you look at it, it's every person that you would draft to protect your country. Like if we had gotten invaded by Germany and Japan at the same time, then every person in the country, every citizen on allegiance should be subject to that draft and should defend our shores. You know, they shouldn't just lay down and let everyone should do it. And they're the militia, right? So they should have a weapon to do that with, right? But back in the day, the only guys that were fighting, that were being drafted, were citizens, the guys that could vote, the men, right? So that applied to that, but it says person, right? The rights of the people and persons within that. So let's apply this, right? If we wanted to go and say, well, who can carry a gun? You know, because everyone's going to shout the Second Amendment, right? That everyone should be entitled to carry a gun. I'm going to go to the point where, hey, you have to at least be able at some time in your life to have qualified to be in the military. Not be in the military, but be able to qualify it. And one of the main things there is IQ, all right? And the minimum standards, they say, is an 81 IQ, the bare minimum where you would pass the ASVAB test. So if we just did an IQ test on these guys and they couldn't pass it, and we said, okay, barring anything else, that's like your minimum requirements to join the military is to have that IQ. You don't have that, you shouldn't be allowed to carry a weapon because we couldn't even draft you. What do you think, Paul?
That's one way of looking at it, yeah.
Yeah. So to get on that, and then, well, women aren't eligible for the draft, but they can join the military, right? So maybe someday they have the women eligible for the draft. And here's the thing. Resident aliens with green cards, right? They're eligible for the draft. They have to register for the draft. If you're a resident alien, you're 18 years old, and you don't register for the draft, that's a felony. When was the last time we convicted someone of not registering for the draft, Paul?
It's got to be probably 30, 40 years, if at least.
A long time, because Carter, all those guys that burned their draft cards, you know, like burning it means anything, right? But they were still registered. You get a draft card means you're registered for the draft. If they burnt their application to get a draft card and never registered, you know, a lot of the guys that went to Canada, Vietnam, they didn't want to be drafted. That was their protest. And then Jimmy Carter pardoned them all. Right? And they're all back here and they're all selling insurance because, you know, they're so anti-establishment. But so that's, you know, when they say, I could see ways that we can enforce our Second Amendment to narrow it down who could have a gun, but then we have to go, wait a second, if you're not supposed to have a gun because the Second Amendment, it says militia and you're not qualified for a militia, and we have a charge here to charge you for that, right? How come we're not charging everyone on it? How come we're not prosecuting them? Again, like I said, for us, I think we're in offline. What will happen is if we prosecuted everyone that was arrested on these gun charges and charged them and prosecuted them on those charges and got convictions on them, we would have a kind of a backlog for a while in the court system because they're not sifting through them all. And then we'd have crowded jail systems. But in the long run, you take these guys, you take the violent people committing the murders, the armed robberies, the aggravated batteries, you take them off the street, you have less people committing these on the street. So people are safer. I'm afraid that I'm talking about the obvious here, right? The obvious is the guilty people aren't being punished, right? Aren't being punished, so they can continue to commit the crimes. How do you stop the guilty people from committing the crimes? Talk them out of it? Has that worked?
Well, if they got a halfway decent sentence, it would serve as a deterrent for the others.
That's what I've been saying.
But they don't.
They don't. Because,
Right.
again, it's that, oh, well, one of them's dead, and if we throw the other in prison, that's like 100% loss. So we'll just take the 50% loss. Or
That might be the way the socially conscious people do it, but that there's another problem here that bothers me. Okay, and I mean, I've heard the stories that the police are better trained, that they get the people to the hospital faster, and there'd be more people that would be dead. But when I was growing up in the late 60s and the early 70s, and we had a higher population at the time. We had like almost 900 people being murdered in Chicago a year. Okay.
Yep.
And then it dropped down to the 500-600s. Then it ticked up, and now I don't know what it is now. But a friend of mine pointed something out to me. Okay, so if you have that, okay, and you think about that over about a 20-year time period, and some people are going to do multiple murders over time, some won't, and some will be person to person, heat of passion murders and stuff like that. But in a general about a decade period, okay, you got to have pretty close to 10,000 murders out there, kind of like free floating murderers out there, kind of like free floating around. And that should be very scary to people, because it's scary to me.
10,000 is an entire division.
Right. So, you would have to run into these people somewhere. They would have to be at the clothing store. You would have to pass them on the road. You would have to do this. This isn't isolated, okay? You got an actual halfway decent sized small city of murderers floating around out there. And, when you take into account the collar counties and crime expanding, you got to have a huge population of actual killers that are not brought to justice and are floating around there. And if they kill once, they'd probably kill again. So, I mean, that should be frightening to people. And the fact that you want to make sure that these people are out in the general population, you got to either have a screw loose, not care about yourself or your family, or just be really screwed up in the head, because they're out there. Okay. And, I don't want to be paranoid or anything like that, but they're out there and they're around. And for you not to be taking that into consideration, you got to be a special kind of idiot. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are like that. And, whether it's the good old, free thinkers and, the tie-dye wearers or whatever, you got to be a really special kind of stupid, because, those people are out there, and perpetuating it is really stupid.
Paul, in Great Britain, they got rid of the handguns, except for certain law enforcement officials, military or whatever. They got rid of that, right? And so their murders didn't really drop down because the people with no impulse control are using knives. So now they got a law against knives. Pretty soon they'll be chopping people's hands off because they don't want to have fists or hands to grip and choke a person out, right? Oh, well, right. You got hands, possession of hands. Can't have that because you kill someone with those. But I won't. Why don't you get the people without the impulse control that have already committed these crimes? So someone stabs someone with a knife, right? And they get them. And and what's the response of the politicians? Well, they're like, oh, well, it was a knife, it's a weapon. It's not like, well, what? And they want to go, what's the root cause? What's the root cause of all these homicides and gun violence? And they're like looking for it. They're like, there's a mystery to them. It's like, what do we breathe that keeps us alive? Oh, air, oxygen, right? They, and they're like, what's the root cause? Impulse control. People don't have impulse control. The people without the impulse control commit the murders because they get the tools to do it. If they don't have one tool, they'll use another tool. You got people slicing people's throats. You got people buying gasoline, spraying it on people and setting them on fire. They have zero impulse control. They've had dozens of arrests, hundreds of incidents that they weren't arrested for, zero accountability, and they keep going out and do it. You give that person accountability for the first thing that they do wrong, the bad thing that they do wrong, and they start to learn. But they never learn impulse control because they're never taught that. They're never taught it. They're never taught impulse control. They take them away from their parents because their parents can't raise them. Parents are, or they're too violent for even their parents. And the state doesn't teach them impulse control. The state just kind of gives them a place to live, right? Gives them a subsistence diet, tells them that they should go to school. And then when they're not at the place they need to be, they report them missing. So they keep track of them. They leave whenever they want, no impulse control, They come back, they're locked out, they call the police force people, let them back in. It's from the very beginning, there's no impulse control. Now, if you're the mama or the daddy of one of these boys or girls that commits all this violence, are you going to go up there and say, perchance it was because I was a bad parent and didn't raise this child to be a good person that this happened? The same people that are not raising their people never take responsibility for their own actions again, and they come out and they said, my kid didn't do anything. And they're like, wait a second, it's on videotape. They literally confessed, right? We got everything, the smoking gun, everything. Oh no, the police planted that all. They set him up. He wouldn't have done that except he was set up. And there you go, right? It's generational. Now, do the preachers they go out there and do they stand up and say, lady, no, your kid committed a heinous crime. Take some responsibility for your parenting. No, they're encouraged to continue to be the victim because whoever's the biggest victim wins in this society. Wins.
I gotta tell you this, and it's two cases, and it's two radically different cases. It's two radically different mothers. So there was this guy, and then he killed somebody because he was selling dope on his tip, the corner, and the kid was very young, okay, and I had when I got to Area 4, the detective was there, I was there, and the youth officer was there, okay? And I said, let's get the mother, okay? So I made him bring them up. This was before I even went in and talked to the kid, okay? And I was talking to the mother, and I found out that she went to Lucy Flower High School, which was the same high school my mother went to like 25 years before. And the woman worked at Marshall Fields, okay? And I had a conversation with her. I said, now, I haven't seen your son. We're going to go in there. We're going to go talk to him, okay? And I said, I want you there during the entire situation. Now, very nice to her and everything. So we go in there and I read the kid his rights, and told him his mother was there, the detective was there, the youth officer was there, I was there, And I asked him, what was going on, and he explained the whole thing. He told me the guy was, working on the tip, and he killed him, and whatever. So, I said, well, we could do this two ways. We could take a court-reported statement, or it could be a written statement or whatever. And he said he wanted to do a written statement, So I had the mother there the entire time, and he confessed, and we did a written statement. Mother was there the entire time. She sat there. I took a Polaroid picture of her with him. They both signed the statement. About a year later, by the time she got to court, the mother, she said she was never there. Okay, that I called her in from the hallway, and then she just signed it, and that was why she was on the picture. Now, she was there the entire time. I know she testified to that. She lied. Okay. And that's more than just covering for your kid. Okay.
Committing perjury for your child.
That's an actual facilitator of what's wrong with society. Now, the other one was a totally different story. Okay. Was two kids. They had raped a woman. Okay. And again, I brought the mother in, and the mother sat down, and I read the kid his rights. Same thing, different area though. Me, the police, the youth officer, the mother, and I asked them what happened. And story was, well, me and whoever saw old girl over there, and I held down old girl while whoever raped her, and then I raped her, and everything. And the mother looked at me and she said, "Mr. State's Attorney, how old was this woman?" And I said, she was like 54. Mother said, "That's how old I am." And she proceeded to beat the living crap out of the kid, which I told her you can't do. Okay.
Stop.
And then,
no, don't do that. Stop.
And then she signed the statement. And then, that kid got convicted too. Two totally different things. Same background, basically, of people, but one mother who actually, was responsible, and another one who was a facilitator. So, if the people are not willing to be the right parent, we're never going to have an end to this.
Well, they're not being shamed by their community.
Well, their community, facilitating it.
You do something, your kids do something, it's publicized, it comes back on you. I'm ashamed, right? I'm always proud of my kids. I'm going to support my kids, but I could be ashamed, all right? I could be ashamed in it. And I'm like, oh, man, that kind of reflects on me. So if the community comes out and says, hey, there's the guy and his kids, and, they're not going to support me. I could defend my kid, but if my kid's really guilty, I'm defending my kid out of giving them emotional support. I know what they did is wrong. I'm trying to make up for what they did is wrong and everything. Oh, I'm walking my kid, my oldest, in baby carriage, and she hated wearing hats, and she kept throwing her hat off. And this is on Archer Avenue. And old Polish ladies used to give me living hell. Where's the hat on that kid? Where's the hat on that kid? They would stop me and just lay into me. We don't see a lot of that.
Right.
There's no old Polish ladies in these neighborhoods screaming at them. How come your kid's slinging dope on the street corner?
There's no "it takes a village" anymore. None whatsoever.
Yeah. All right, we'll be back. Host Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday, noon until 2 on WRMN, 1410 AM, the Fox River Valley Media Network, home of Fox Sports. And you can always watch us on the WRMN YouTube live channel. And you could listen to us on live streaming. Go to WRMN1410.com, hit listen live, bam, there it'll be. And also our shows on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel are uploaded there, commercial free. And I'm going to put out my weekly plug for the, as you know, this started out as the Veterans Shout Out Show. It still is a Veterans Shout Out Show. Any veterans got anything going that they want to let everyone know, call in. We'll put you right on the air. So the Dunkin' Donuts veterans meets at the Bunker Hill Woods in Niles off Caldwell and Toohey. And every Tuesday, 9 o'clock it starts. Guys usually start getting there around 8. They put out some good information. We have some coffee. We have some donuts. We socialize together. It's a real good time. Open to any veteran. Actually open to anyone. So if you got information that you want to put out to the veterans there, you got to come and speak to Carlos and Roger first. They're the guys that are in charge of it. You know, it's totally, there's no membership fees, there's no membership list, there's, you know, it's the most organized, unorganized group ever. All right. So, Paul, I think one of the things, right, is it's not these violent individuals with the lack of impulse control are great little pawns. They're like drones, all right? They're drones to use by the more violent guys at the top or the smarter guys at the top that have a little bit more impulse control that kept them from going to too much prison or whatever. They learned their lesson. They're at the top now. They're sucking in all the money from the criminal conspiracies and all that stuff, right? And that they use these guys and they offer them a certain lifestyle to become accustomed to with, you know, the nice sneakers and everything because they get everything cash. They don't pay taxes. That they are, because they're such a danger to our society as a whole, I consider them fifth columnists, all right? Even though they're U.S. citizens, right? At one point, are you really not acting as a good citizen? I think declare them terrorist organizations.
Evil is always an enemy. Whether it's a state actor or a miscreant or a bad person in your own country, evil is always the enemy, whether it's on a big scale or a little scale. And these people are evil. You know, they're diabolical, they're conniving, they're scammers, and they're just plain evil. And it's not okay. It really isn't.
See, one of the things about prison is we have a society. We have a free society, a polite society, right? But we're made up of laws, all right? No one is above the law except for who I choose, right? But no one's supposed to be above the law, right? However, the people that don't obey the law to the point where they have caused society, I wouldn't say irreparable harm and damages. You kill a good person, that's it. It's irreparable. That person will never come back, right? There's no repairs to that. Zero weight. That person will never come back. You killed them and everything. So you have chosen by doing that crime to society, you've chosen to separate yourself from society. You're better than that society because you don't have to obey that society's rules. That's why society puts you in prison. Because there you go. You're not part of our society anymore. You're a prison society. You go be better there, right? And then, okay, right, you want to rejoin our society? You got to do that. So now here's the thing. They don't obey any of the laws. They're not paying income taxes on the money that they're making, cash money, right? Everyone else pays taxes. You got to do that, right? Your tax money goes to fund the county hospital. These guys don't do any of that. They're using up the major part of resources every time they get shot and go to county hospital. You know, they go there and we're paying for that. Well, at that point, and I know it's not part of our society, right? We're like, oh, wait a second. We got all these drug convictions on you and everything. You've chosen not to be part of our society because you're better than us. Go find a gangbanger-funded hospital. Go find a gang doctor to take care of you. Go, have the gang pump blood, get the blood and give you transfusions and all that stuff, right? Or, wait, you spent all your money on this, but now you need food for your kids that, you're not paying child support on, but everyone's, and I'm sorry, you can't have that because you've chosen not to follow the rules of our society. It seems draconian, right? Seems draconian. A person's, where's your human, people go, where's your human compassion? My human compassion is the people that are trying their best. They're trying their best. They're being good people. They're not trying to take away or take advantage of anyone else. And it gets harder and harder for them because there's no more resources for them because it's like Mama Pig has had 12 piglets and she's only got 10 nipples, right? Giant Fat Pig is forcing his way. You know, the two runt pigs are always getting nothing, right? They're going to die off. Not because they weren't better pigs or anything, because the big giant one that's greedier than the others and everything is making sure he gets 3 times his fill rather than let the other two take a turn. Is it wrong? Well, if you're out there and you're making thousands of dollars on the streets selling drugs, why should you go to society and say, hey, I need your public aid too? Right?
You're right.
But there's no enforcement on that. It's because it's so you overwhelm it. You know, it's like a stampede. You know, the cows are all, you know, you got all these cows and everything, and then they stampede, and there's a power to them. You could shoot 1 or 2 cows; they're still all coming, right? You can't shoot them all because they stampeded, and that's what they do. They overwhelm it, and there's so much fraud and abuse out there. Look at Minneapolis, right? That fraud, right? Now they're like 430 people, and they're going after them. But that's the tip of the iceberg that they said, the tip of the iceberg of this. But everyone else is paying taxes and everything, and then you got to look at stuff like that. Why are we in that? Why wasn't this enforced before? Same thing. Okay, I'm kind of off track. Let's go back to the gun thing, to the killers, all right? To the little killers in society. If, you know, you watch Law and Order, and I love this about Law and Order because they make it all so cut and dry, right? It's all, oh, it's easy and makes the good guys the bad guys and everything. You look at it. At what point, I'm mama, right? I'm letting the kid live at my house. He's 18 years old. He should be an adult. He could be out, but he's living at my house. He goes out and kills 3 people. He comes back. I know it, right? I know it. They knock at the door and they go, was your kid home at this time? He wasn't, but I'm going to lie and say he was, right? Give him an alibi. Now my kid goes out and kills 3 more people. And I find out that mama lied because the kid wasn't home at that time, right? Is mama ever going to get charged?
She should, but
She
she's
should.
never going to be.
Yeah. And again, at what point, you know, if the code of blue silent.
When is there going to be accountability for the complacency and the active frustrating of the criminal justice system? When is there going to be accountability reached down to these so-called storefront preachers and these mega church guys and these parents of these basic thugs? When is there going to be some reckoning? When is going to be their day where they've stoked this for so long, okay? And they've stoked it for their own aggrandizement,
Yes.
and for their own benefit, to make, you know, to be an influencer, or to be a urban translator, or to be a, you know, like a
Organizer,
spokesman,
community organizer.
right? Or to be a spokesman for the
People.
street.
I'm talking for the little people. I'm their soapbox.
Yeah, we're talking for the peeps. But when is that guy going to have some accountability? Because I go into court and I tell some story and I'm lying. I'm at the very least getting fired, losing my license, and probably going to jail. when are these guys going to have their accountability day? When is going to be the reckoning for these people that are stoking this? Because they're not stoking, you know, peace and harmony and kumbaya. They're stoking more violence. They're stoking more innocent lives dying. They're not protecting the streets. They're washing the streets in blood. When is there going to be accountability for these folks?
Well, Paul, I have to say, and this is my belief, right? The accountability will come, and you have to have faith in that accountability, all right? And it will come the second they die.
That is true.
They will get that accountability. They will absolutely get the accountability. And the higher power, God sees all things, will know. I only did it for the community's good. And it'll go, did the community's good include that 100-room mansion and all those Cadillacs and all the dead bodies that you laid out there by encouraging? You know, what are you going to do? All right. Oh, I'm going to go against Rome. Going to go against Rome. Going to go against Rome, right? I'm going to go against Rome. Well, how are you going against Rome? Well, I'm throwing I'm ignoring my people killing each other, right? And I'm blaming that on Rome. I'm blaming it all on Rome. Yeah, no, it's your own problem. It's your own people killing each other. You know,
They've made Law and Order a scapegoat for some contrived idea.
Well, the idea is my favorite idea is Wakanda. I love Wakanda, not Wisconsin or Illinois. I love Wakanda in Africa, the mythical country. It's all perfect.
Right.
And what is it, Paul? Is it a democracy? I didn't even see the movies. No, it's a monarchy.
Oh.
But they have a benevolent king because they could have benevolent kings, right? Because it's a monarchy, right? And everything's all good and better and peaceful and nice, and their technology is all there, and their medical technology, everything is so much better, right? Doesn't exist. It's non-existent. It's a lie. It's a total lie, right? None of that has existed. It's existed. The continent has existed for millions of years, all right? And, you know, where's the great art that came out of it? The great mechanics, it's, you have to have a control. You have to let your arts, you have to let your sciences, you have to let even your politics, right? Your political science. You have to let all this stuff operate in sort of a free environment. You can't force it, right? And you have to have, that's when you get the culture. That's when you get we're going to send people to the universities to learn. You had the Greeks, the great learning universities, right? People were kind of born smart or whatever, but they all went to universities. They passed down knowledge after knowledge after knowledge, generational knowledge. You got that generational knowledge going down, right? You have it if you're an artisan, right? You're an artisan, and you do woodworking or your carpentry or something, and you have your kids. From the time your kids are born, you're teaching them that art, right? You're passing on that generational knowledge to them of something for society, right? You're teaching them all the stuff that you know, all right? And then they learn new stuff, all right? And brains get bigger and they learn new stuff and new stuff and new stuff. If you're not teaching your kids all that, passing on that wisdom to all your kids, then the kids have to start over. They're starting over from scratch, All right, they got to go in there and search this knowledge out from themselves and search these skills out for themselves. All right, if some of them, it's a lot slower. All right, so again, it's the society, it's the family, it's the clan, right? It's the parish, right? It's like, you pass these things on, the generational knowledge passes on to your kids. If the only generational knowledge you're getting is like stand on this corner and rocks and blows, you've already surpassed you're not a chemist. You're not really doing retail, without a good base, right? A good base to build from within the community, within their own community, right? And the government can't force it. It has to be a person, people forcing it on. In Haiti, when I was there, the dirt poorest town, mud huts, no electricity, no running water. And these kids would come to the one house where the lady knew how to read and write, and they were scratching out in the ground how to do their alphabet, how to do their ABCs, all that stuff in the ground. That's in Haiti. But that's far away from Port-au-Prince. You put millions in Port-au-Prince, and it's just a slum ghetto. No one's doing that. It's a rat race. They're all fighting for themselves. But when you get out to that one small town, that small community, without a police force, right? Without a prison, without a jail, without any of that, there's still the small families there that are in the dirtiest poor teaching their kids how to read and write, all right? And to do math and stuff, and teach them what they have, trying to pass on that generational knowledge. In the cities here, in these dirt communities, you got the boys and girls clubs. There's a few of them left, but they've been sued into the ground. The Boy Scouts have been sued into the ground. Everything has become litigated to the point where the only things that are out there are the city, right? The park district, the basketball, and all that other stuff. And they're trying, but the money's not going to those things. It's not going to repair that stuff. It's not going to have, community classes. You got the city colleges and all, but they're not going there. That's out of their neighborhood. That's far away from their neighborhood. Believe me, they go 2 blocks out of their neighborhood and they're terrified. They're terrified, right? They are out of their control. They might be in the same gang, but it's different factions of the same gang, and they're not allowed in that area. What are you doing over here? Whatever, They're in their prisons of their own making. But take that prison. If you get thrown, Paul, you're thrown on an island with nothing. What do?
You try to make fire. You try to make shelter. You try to survive.
Pretty soon you're Gilligan's Island, right?
Right.
You're putting up a hut. You're putting up, you're burning stuff. You're taking care of your own hygiene and everything. You're trying to find food and everything to survive, right? Just to survive. You've got nothing, and you're building up from something. You know how many people, if you took all these kids that got arrested for slinging dope and you dropped them in groups on that island, all you would get is the Lord of the Flies. That's all you would get. They would devolve. Instead of evolve, they would devolve, right? You throw one of them on that, they'd starve to death. Starve. There's no fast food here. There's nothing this. They're going to eat poisonous something. They're going to get so hungry, they're going to eat something poisonous. They don't know how to cook for themselves. They don't know how to make fire because there's no more Boy Scouts there. There's no more mentorship. One of my favorite lines, I'm working with an older black lady over in the 5th District at the Alkeld Gardens. And I says, you're not going to solve this problem until you get rid of all the illegals and open up these entry-level jobs for these kids that are generations here, been here for generations, to have these decent jobs. And she goes, man, you could put a job on every corner and they'll stay inside. I says, maybe that'll solve the problem. Put a job on every corner. All right. And so, yeah, hey, you start earning your own money, legitimately. Well, even them, even if they're every dollar that they have is illegal gains, right? It's undocumented, on-tax gain, and they get robbed of like $5,000 of their bling, and you write them a report. Do you think that report goes to the IRS, and the IRS says, where the hell did you get $5,000 to buy all this bling, because we don't see any W-2s on you or W-4s? No one ever filled out a W-4? So
that never happened.
Yeah, where's the taxes taken out of this, plus the Social Security and everything else? They're like, but
I don't know,
because there's not enough agents to go after that either.
Right.
And I go off on and how even then it's necessary to keep the economy going. All right, when we come back, last quarter, Chief Guard of the Republic radio show. Every Saturday, noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM. You could stream us live, WRMN1410.com. Hit stream live, or you could watch on YouTube and go to WRMN's YouTube channel, where our shows are on there on the live feed. And then we also post our shows commercial free. I edit it out. It's on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. And so, Paul, I think my logic finally came back to me. I think I've been talking in different off different vectors, going on side quests, so to speak. But here's the logic. All right, if the Second Amendment is for the militia, and the militia means that you have to be capable of being in service of the country, military service of the country, to defend the military. If you are incapable of being that because your IQ is either too low, or you got too many felony convictions, or drug conviction, violent conviction, or sex conviction, all right, you can't be in the military. So if you're bearing arms now, that makes you someone bearing arms against us, which should make you a domestic terrorist. And if we treated them all like terrorists now, the gun charge, forget all the other charges, right? Just treat, if you have the gun there and you're committing the crime and you were not capable of ever being part of the militia and having the Second Amendment apply to you, all right, you should be charged with terrorism. And then forget all the other things. We just charge you with terrorism. All the other charges, you just have the one charge, like RICO statutes, right? Just charge them with terrorism, domestic terrorism. Boop. And now you put them in jail for a domestic terrorism beef. You have special domestic terrorism jails, which are different from the other jails. Just the domestic terrorists go there. And you set precedents on that. And now their kid is no longer a misunderstood honor student, right? He has, because words have meaning and symbols have meaning, and when they give you a nickname or they tag you with something, right? What's their favorite tag? Racist, right? Oh, you're racist. And they double down on that one. They go, you're Nazi. You're a Nazi racist. Well, we just tell these kids, well, no, he's not a drug dealer. He's not a gangbanger. He's a terrorist. Flat out. He's a terrorist. And how do I know he's a terrorist? Because it's an organized, unconventional armed warfare. Because they're fighting with other factions, right, out there. They're carrying on war in the United States between each other like it's a game of Risk, but often we have a lot of unintended collateral damage. Little 8-year-old don't know nothing, right? Don't know nothing. Rocking in a rocking chair catches a bullet in the brain. right?
I don't know nothing.
She didn't know
Yeah.
nothing. She gets hit by a bullet in the brain. What did she do? Well, that's unintended.
Didn't do nothing.
That's collateral damage for our gang war because sacrifices have to be made in wartime. Well, they're terrorists, right? So give them the label of terrorists, and give the label of all these gangs terrorism. Not a domestic street gang, not the cool things that Law and Order and all these other shows trying to make them look like they have any form of decency or any form of honor or respect, right? They have their gang code. Oh, I'm living by the gang code. Dude, they will turn on you in a heartbeat, right? In a heartbeat if it suits them. How many of these, quote, gangbangers or even organized crime members, when faced with serious incarceration, flipped? Nearly all of them. Yeah. But they lived their life by the code till the code came to face them. It wasn't a problem till it was their problem. Well, forget that thing of labeling them with anything romantic at all. You're a terrorist, flat out. These kids shooting the guns in the neighborhood, they're not disenfranchised. They're terrorists. They know exactly what they're doing. All right, I'm going to get on, and I'm going to forget the disenfranchised stuff, right? Forget all that other stuff. They're a flat out terrorist. And why? Because we won't let them fight for our country. One, they can't be trusted. We're not going to waste the resources on it. We're not going to do anything else. We're not even going to try to train them, right? Because they're not going to be the dirty dozen out there. They're not going to be the dirty 13 or anything like that. No, they're flat out terrorists, and you can't trust them in your ranks. The Russians had the disciplinary battalions, Paul, in World War II. You know what those disciplinary battalions were made up of?
Murderers?
Nope.
Then they were people that opposed the government.
That's right. They were political prisoners. They were political prisoners. They weren't the murderers. They weren't the black marketers. They weren't the thieves. They weren't any of that stuff because those guys all joined the Vardí, all right? The Brotherhood of Thieves, when they hit the gulags. And those guys were like, you do not cooperate with the government whatsoever. You don't do it. So when they were short of soldiers, the government, again, this is in a free country, right? This is Stalin, right? Goes to the gulags and takes a lot of these guys, a lot of which were trained officers in the military, right? Because they had the purges in 1939 and 1940. But now they needed trained soldiers, right? So they pull them out of the gulags and they put them into this disciplinary battalion. But when they're in the gulags, they had to be part of the Vardí. As soon as the Vardí said, hey, you're cooperating with the government, you're no longer one of us. So they go off, and what does Stalin do after the war? Does he thank them? Sends them right back to the prisons, where now they're persona non grata completely. They're dead. They're the lowest form of life in those prisons because they cooperated with the government. Had they said, no, I'm not going to go and fight, I'm going to stay with these guys, they may have lived through prison, right? But they all had romantic. Those guys, they're not the murdered because the murderers wouldn't do that. They wouldn't go out and do that. They're like, no, we're not part of your society. That's what they said. All right, that's the romanticism. Is they said they weren't part of the society and they meant it, right? So they made their own society within these prisons. All right, these terrorists, they don't want to be part of our society. They don't want to play by our rules. They're terrorists. That's it.
What's one of my favorite sayings, Mike?
Only obey the laws that apply to you.
No, purge when you get the urge.
And do the Fox Trotsky.
Right, and the Tsar went too far.
And remember, Trotsky died in 40.
Right, and he had a headache.
Of a splitting headache in Mexico City. Trotsky had it coming.
Yeah.
Again, he had it coming. Stalin had it coming. These guys all had it coming, all right? But what I'm saying, these terrorist organizations out there, yes, they're citizens. Yay, they're born in the United States. Yay, their parents were born in the United States. But you know what? They're parasites living in our society. Is it the price we pay for having a free society? No. No. The price we pay for having a free society is politicians. It's not crime. It's politicians. All right? Because what it should be is like the price we pay for living in a free society is that if you don't want to live in this free society by our society rules, get out or we'll put you out. No one's forcing you to stay here, but we will force you to leave, or we technically, if you're born here, we can't deport you, right? So we don't deport you. We put you in prison. You're still here. Yay. We're still feeding you. Yay. But you're a terrorist and you're outside of our society rules. You know, when they have a parole board, what's that supposed to be?
Reintegration into society.
Can you reintegrate into society? That's the first thing they should look at these guys. What's the rate, what crime did you commit? Do you ever see the show Sprung? I got to tell you, find it on Netflix. No. You will, it is funny. It's a great show. I love the writing on it. And these people are kind of career criminals, but you kind of cheer for them in the way they're Robin Hooding it, right? Guy goes to prison for 30 years for pot when he was 18 years old. For pot. Because the judge was having a bad day and put him in prison for 30 years for pot. Right? Mandatory, gave him 30 years, gave him the max, and he's in prison that whole time. Right? What are the chances that pot dealing is going to send him back to prison now? Right? But if the guy was cooking methamphetamine, right, and he went to prison for that, and he has no other skill sets, and you parole him, what's he going to go back to doing?
Cooking meth.
Right? What are the chances he's going to receive? High, right? Let's say he goes to prison for cooking meth. While he's in prison, he learns the skill of being an HVAC guy, right? He takes all the classes he can, online, everything else, what they have. He works in the shop. He gets all these certifications and everything, and he's got a line on a job outside, right? The state's going to give him a line, and he's going to have parole officer. Yeah, there's a guy, he showed some positive influence, right? He wants to rejoin society and do something the society needs. Right? I think society could get along fine without methamphetamine cookers. HVAC guys, people like their heat. They like their cold. They like their air conditioning. I think society needs those guys. One, they need. Two, they don't. Drug dealers? No, we don't need those. Unlicensed pharmacists? No, we don't need those. So unless they learn a skill in prison that shows that they're going to come back to society, right? Should they be paroled?
Only if they're capable of being reintegrated positively.
Yeah, and they don't. We're overcrowded. So
that's not my answer. That's not a good one.
Yeah, it's not my problem. Parole board. But the parole boards are political, like everything else. And it's like, well, we need more room. Get this guy out. Right. We got to put worse guys in. Even if the guy, he got life in prison, right? Because he did something really heinous. Right? Really heinous. Did something heinous, life in prison. And then they put him out because he's 85. And they say, oh, well, what could he do? He's 85. Well, what if he does something wrong? I don't care about that.
My question is,
keep him in prison.
The guy he killed that doesn't reach 85?
Yeah.
Or never reach 35 or never reach 45,
Are you reintegrating that guy into society, or are you feeling good about yourself because you don't want an old man to die in prison?
I think you're an idiot if you're doing that.
But they do it. They do
You're
it.
an idiot.
They do it, Paul.
I know.
That's their excuse. Well, what can he do? Dude, who knows? He could cook up. He's a chemist. He was a chemist. He's cooking up methamphetamine. What if he cooked up what is it? Fentanyl, and just set that loose and killed 40 junkies, right? 40 junkies. Oh well, You don't have to be super strong and spry to cook fentanyl. And it's you get enough money and have one last splurge before you go out. And then you live to 100, 120. And you have 35 good years on this earth because you got paroled at 85 because they thought you were going to die. Kid does something bad, you discipline the kid. I'm not saying you beat the hell out of them. It's got to be proportional, right? Proportional.
Yep.
Because if it's overly proportional, the kids don't understand. Then you're just being a psycho, right? I used to walk my kids through the parking lot. Parking lots are the most dangerous place ever. I says, these places are infested with parking lot zombies. They are literally zombies. They are the undead in 4,000-pound death machines. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about anyone. So stick close to me because they could see me. I'm 6 foot tall. I will put a dent in their car, a very large dent. They're going to avoid me. But you little kids, and the kids want to pull off and they see a butterfly there or see a balloon there, and I got to squeeze their hands a little harder and say, no, hold my hand and stay with me because you're in the most dangerous place in the world right now. That's proportional, right?
Right.
I'm not picking them up, punching them in the head, shaking them silly, even though I'm at the most high anxiety time of my life in that parking lot with these kids. Looking for all the parking lot zombies out there. All right, but if I don't discipline the kids at all, if I just let them run around and then a parking lot zombie runs them over, whose fault is that?
Yours, because you didn't act properly.
That's right. Well, the parking lot zombie should have known too, right? But no, it's me because those are my kids, right? So society doesn't protect the people that are paying their taxes. I pay my taxes. I follow your stupid rules, no matter how many of you put them in. All of your unicorn sparkle farts rules, right? All your unicorn rules, I follow it even though no one else is following it. All the stuff that I do, all right? I don't step on cracks on the sidewalk, to that level, right? And you don't protect me, which is all I'm asking you to do, by letting these guys that follow no rules run around with no things. Now it's your fault. Just like my kids running loose, you got to have something. When's the last time a politician stepped down because their policies caused too much death?
Never.
Never. They just blame it on the other guy. A guy that's not even they'll blame it on me. It's Tuman's fault.
They'll blame it on jobs.
Jobs.
They'll blame it on the economy.
Yeah, there's not enough jobs.
They'll blame it on the weather. They'll blame it on Rio. So, forget the blame game. Hold these politicians accountable. When someone's killed, say, hey, Alderman, that's in your ward. That's in your 16th district, Mr. Alderman. 2 people murdered, multiple gunshots by a play lot with kids in your ward. What did you do to increase the police presence? Because it's like 1 police officer for every 5 square miles. What did you do, Mr. Alderman? What did you do to change the policies of the city and the police department to get more police over there? What did you do to change the policies to not allow Section 8 housing over there? We'll solve the crime problem. You know when the crime in the suburbs started kicking off? The best. When they tore down the housing project.
That's right. And they sent them all out Section 8 to the suburbs. And now, yay, the suburbs get their taste of it. Yay. All right. Why? Because, hey, they weren't meant to be a lifestyle. But it became a lifestyle. It should be an unaccepted lifestyle. There should, like I said, Gangbanging should be terrorism. I'm a street gang. I'm with the Social Athletic Club. They're not the Knights of Columbus. They're not the American Legion. They're not listed as a 501c3. All right? They don't do 990s, tax forms, you know. You won't find them up there on the charitable lists. Although some of them may have formed 501c3s just to launder the money.
That they did that to get the head start and the child care money, so that they could, you know, they could legitimize their criminal activities.
Yep. All right. So my solution for the gun violence is, one, prosecute it, but forget all the any new gun laws. We got plenty of gun laws. Just charge them with domestic terrorism. That's it. You're terrorizing. So we had disorderly conduct, right? And disorderly conduct, here's the great thing. You got 40 people calling. And they all call the police, 911. Maybe they want to remain anonymous, but they say, this guy's making a fool out of himself. He's blocking the streets. No one could get out of their cars or anything. He's just there threatening everyone. Please send the police to come take him away, right? And we're like, okay, we need someone to sign complaints for disorderly conduct. Well, why don't you just lock him up for that? You saw him doing it. I says, yes, but I don't care. The law says I don't care. I think he's acting a goof, yes. He's disturbing me, but unfortunately my peace can't be disturbed. You have to sign. I ain't signing that. Snitches get stitches, right?
Yeah.
Well, you want this guy gone? Yeah, lock him up, take him away. Well, sign. Well, no, I'm not doing anything. But what do you do? Because as soon as you leave without locking the guy up, guess what? They call again. They call again, they call again, they call again. And you're constantly going over there until finally you get the guy out of the way and the calls stop coming. So now you go handle the real calls, right? But no one's going to sign that. Well, if you list the guy as a domestic terrorist and now you got the power to charge him with terrorism, that's a little different. You know, but they still have a thing. A police officer can't be terrorized. Can't have your peace broken, can't have your terrorism. So now you got to get someone to sign. It's got to be like the RICO statute. It's got to be on a local level. You can't have the feds do it. The feds ain't got enough people. The feds can hammer these big guys on RICO and tax evasion, which is what they end up getting them on, right? But the little guys, if there were the Chinese, the 13-cent solution, you know what that is, Paul, right?
Yeah, the bullet.
All right, so and like a 9mm bullet cost 13 cents back in the day. And so they had all the junkies and all the drug dealers. And they told junkies they had like so much time to not be a junkie anymore. And they told the drug dealers they had so much time to find an active employment, positive employment. And then after that amount of time, they came by, and if the junkie was still on the stuff, they put a bullet in his head. If the dope dealer didn't have a job, they put a bullet in his head. Problem solved for a short period of time. It was a short-term fix, right? It was a very good fix. Well, you do that with these guys, right? And you say, hey, you're a gangbanger. Well, you got so much time not to be a gangbanger anymore, we put you in prison for life because I'm not against the death penalty, right? But if you take all their little gangbangers off the lower level and the bigger guys have to go down on the street and risk their lives again to make money, and then you scoop them up, as soon as the top guys don't have any money to bribe the politicians, the preachers, and everyone else, guess what? They ain't got enough money for lawyers to defend them either, and the feds put them in prison for the stuff that they didn't pay. And there's no bond, and there's no, oh, well, let's make a deal and everything else. No. So you take out the little guys. It's harder to capture all the generals in one place. But if you take all the little guys and there's no more armies, The generals aren't going to fight. You're not going to put them on the front line. Here you go, general. Here's your machine gun. Go fight the guys. Go win the war. Get rid of the little guys. Charge them with domestic terrorism. Here's the deal you make with them. Domestic terrorism, life in prison. Turn in a guy above you, half your life in prison. All right, so when we come back, something will happen this week. It'll be the 4th of July. What should we talk about on 4th of July, Paul?
How about independence?
Okay, independence. Nice.
Have a good week, everyone.